Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is sitting in a waiting room, paying $300 for a consultation, waiting 3 weeks for test results, picking up a prescription that comes with 11 side effects for a condition that a plant growing in their backyard has been treating successfully for 3,000 years. We did not lose the knowledge. We were sold something to replace it. Before pharmaceutical companies existed, before prescription pads existed, before insurance claims existed, human beings healed themselves. Effectively, consistently, for thousands of years, with plants. And the civilizations that used them weren't weak or primitive or lucky. They were paying closer attention to their bodies than most people today ever will. Today we're going through 7 of those plants. The ones with the most evidence. The ones where modern clinical science looked at what ancient healers were doing and had to admit they were right. Stay with me, because plant number 3 on this list has been shown in randomized controlled trials to outperform a pharmaceutical painkiller for headache relief. Not match it, outperform it. And number 1 is something most people have in their kitchen right now that has demonstrated antimicrobial activity against antibiotic-resistant bacteria that modern medicine is struggling to treat. 7 plants. Thousands of years of proof. Let's go. But before we get into the list, I need to tell you something important. Everything you're about to hear in this video is the introduction, the surface layer, because I've gone much further than 7 plants. I put together a completely free ebook that covers 30 specific health conditions, from high blood pressure to chronic inflammation to digestive disorders to poor sleep to joint pain. And for each one, gives you a practical, actionable, natural protocol you can start implementing today. It's called How to Treat 30 Common Conditions Naturally, without prescriptions, without side effects, and without your doctor's permission. I want you to sit with that title for a moment. Without your doctor's permission. Because here's what nobody inside the medical establishment will say directly to your face. You do not need anyone's authorization to use a plant that human beings have been healing with successfully for 5,000 years. You don't need a prescription to consume what your great-grandparents used before the first synthetic drug was ever manufactured in a laboratory. This ebook is completely free. And here is exactly how to get it. Drop the 2 words, "Please send" in the comments section right now. Just those 2 words. Please send. And I will personally send you the download link directly. Go and do that right now, then come back and keep watching. Because by the time we reach plant number 1 on this list, you are going to want that resource already open in front of you. Now let's start with the info proper.
Plant 7, lavender. The plant that performed like Valium without the addiction. Most people think lavender is a candle scent, a fragrance, something you spray on your pillow, or burn in a diffuser on a stressful evening. The clinical research thinks it is an anxiety treatment. Lavandula angustifolia has been used for centuries across Mediterranean cultures for calming the nervous system, improving sleep quality, and easing tension headaches. Roman soldiers added it to their bathing water before battle, not for the fragrance, but to manage the nervous system activation that precedes combat. Medieval herbalists prescribed it consistently for anxiety and nervous tension. Every culture that encountered this plant reached for it when the nervous system needed calming. For most of modern history, medicine dismissed all of that as pleasant-smelling folklore. Then the clinical trials started arriving. A standardized oral lavender oil preparation, Silexin, has now been tested in multiple randomized controlled trials for generalized anxiety disorder. The results showed meaningful, measurable reductions in anxiety symptoms comparable in several studies to pharmaceutical benzodiazepine medications. The same class of drugs as Valium, the same receptor targets, but without the dependency, without the withdrawal effects, without the cognitive dulling that those drugs consistently produce. The research is solid enough that this lavender preparation is formally approved as an anxiety treatment in multiple European countries. This is not herbal wellness marketing. This is a regulatory body reviewing clinical trial data and issuing approval. That distinction matters. Inhaled lavender aroma has separate documented effects. Studies show that lavender aromatherapy measurably reduces circulating cortisol levels and improves sleep quality, not just in self-reported questionnaires, but in objective physiological markers, e.g. sleep stage data, salivary cortisol measurements, real numbers, Traditional uses included lavender tea before bed for insomnia, lavender-infused oil massaged into the temples for headaches, and dried flower sachets placed near the pillow. These practices were not superstition. They were people working consistently and effectively with a pharmacological mechanism that we now understand at the molecular level. Lavender got sidelined as medicine the moment it became more profitable as perfume. The chemistry never changed. The marketing did. Those purple fields have been waiting for you to remember what they were originally planted for. Plant 6, elderberry. The berry that cut flu duration by 4 days that nobody can patent. Before flu shots, before Tamiflu, before antiviral prescriptions that cost $200 for a 5-day course, there was a jar of elderberry syrup in the pantry through winter. In virtually every household across Europe, as standard as keeping firewood stacked by the door. Hippocrates, the father of medicine himself, reportedly called the elder tree his entire medicine chest. That is one man's assessment of one plant covering the majority of what he needed to treat. Then synthetic pharmaceuticals arrived, and elderberry got quietly retired, labeled as old-fashioned, unscientific, something grandmothers did before we knew better. Here is what the clinical research actually shows. Multiple randomized controlled trials have confirmed that elderberry extract from the dark purple berries of Sambucus nigra significantly reduces both the duration and the severity of influenza. Not colds, actual influenza. One widely cited randomized trial found that flu patients taking elderberry extract recovered an average of 4 days sooner than those on placebo. 4 days. A meta-analysis pooling results across multiple independent studies confirmed meaningful reductions in both duration and symptom severity across the board. 4 days shorter flu duration is not a marginal improvement. That is a substantial, clinically meaningful outcome that most pharmaceutical antivirals would be proud to claim. The mechanism is a dual action that makes it particularly potent. The anthocyanins and flavonoids in elderberry appear to interfere directly with the virus's ability to replicate, physically blocking the pathogen. Simultaneously, they activate immune defenses to accelerate the body's own response, blocking the virus and boosting immune activity at the same time. That combination is why the effect is so pronounced and so consistent across independent trials. Making elderberry syrup at home is straightforward. Simmer dried elderberries with filtered water, raw honey, fresh ginger, and cinnamon until the liquid reduces by half. Strain it, bottle it, and keep it in your refrigerator through winter. 1 tablespoon daily for prevention. Several tablespoons a day at the very first sign of illness. It tastes rich, warming, and nothing like medicine is supposed to taste. Elderberry did not get pushed aside because it stopped working. The evidence says it outperforms most of what replaced it. The difference is simple. One of them makes someone extraordinarily rich. The other one just makes you well. And nobody can patent a berry growing in the hedgerow.
Plant 5, chamomile. The grandmotherly tea that binds to the same brain receptors as Valium. Most people think chamomile is mild, harmless, gentle, something for nervous grandmothers and colicky babies. Something you drink when you want to feel cozy, not when you need real medicine. That assumption is pharmacologically incorrect. Matricaria chamomilla, the small daisy-like flower with white petals and a yellow center that has been used as medicine across Europe and Asia for over 2,000 years, contains a compound called apigenin. And apigenin binds to benzodiazepine receptors in the brain. These are the exact same receptors that pharmaceutical anti-anxiety drugs target. The same receptor class as Valium. The same neurological mechanism that makes prescription sedatives work. Chamomile accesses it through a gentler, non-dependency-forming pathway. This is not a metaphor. This is not a loose comparison. This is the documented molecular mechanism, published in peer-reviewed pharmacology research. Clinical trials have confirmed what the mechanism predicts. A randomized controlled trial published in a peer-reviewed journal found that chamomile extract produced significant, measurable reductions in generalized anxiety disorder symptoms compared to placebo. A follow-up study found that long-term chamomile supplementation reduced the rate of anxiety relapse in patients who had previously responded to treatment. These are not minor findings. These are outcomes that pharmaceutical companies would run press releases about. For sleep, chamomile has been shown to improve sleep quality and reduce sleep onset time, particularly in elderly populations and new mothers. Two groups where pharmaceutical sleep aids carry their highest documented risks and where dependency forms fastest. The anti-inflammatory and gut-soothing properties of chamomile are separately well established. Traditional applications for upset stomach, irritable bowel symptoms, and inflammatory skin conditions are all supported by modern research. Chamomile tea applied topically has documented wound healing and anti-eczema effects that have been used for centuries and validated in clinical studies. 2,000 years of healers reaching for those small white flowers every time someone could not sleep or could not calm down. They were not being gentle. They were being precise. They were working with a real neurological tool that we now understand far better than they did. And that still works exactly as it always has. Chamomile became so normalized as a bedtime drink that people forgot it was medicine. The chemistry was always there, hiding behind a tea bag. Plant 4, turmeric. The golden root pharmaceutical companies are spending billions trying to replicate. Pharmaceutical companies have spent enormous research budgets trying to develop a stable, patentable, synthetic version of the primary active compound in turmeric. Think carefully about what that tells you. When an industry that operates entirely on profit motive looks at a plant root sitting in a spice cabinet and decides it is worth spending billions attempting to recreate, that plant is doing something real. Curcuma longa, the bright yellow-orange root that gives curry its color, has been a cornerstone of Ayurvedic and traditional Chinese medicine for thousands of years. It is currently one of the most intensively studied plants in modern medical research, with thousands of published papers examining its mechanisms and clinical effects. The active compound is curcumin, and curcumin has demonstrated anti-inflammatory effects so significant and so broad that researchers describe it as inhibiting multiple molecular pathways involved in inflammation simultaneously. Not one pathway, multiple. This is why pharmaceutical companies want a synthetic version, because chronic inflammation is the underlying biological driver of nearly every major disease of modern life. Heart disease, type 2 diabetes, Alzheimer's disease, cancer, rheumatoid arthritis, inflammatory bowel disease. If you can reliably, safely, and consistently reduce chronic inflammation, you can meaningfully reduce the risk and progression of all of them. Clinical trials have demonstrated curcumin producing improvements in osteoarthritis pain and joint function comparable to pharmaceutical nonsteroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, without the gastrointestinal damage those drugs cause with long-term use. Research on brain health and cognitive protection is ongoing, and the preliminary data is significant enough that major research institutions are investing heavily in curcumin-based Alzheimer's prevention studies. Now here is the detail that makes this extraordinary. The ancient Ayurvedic practice of golden milk, warm turmeric mixed with milk and black pepper, turns out to be pharmacologically sophisticated in a way that nobody in the ancient world could have explained, but somehow got exactly right. The piperine compound in black pepper increases the bioavailability of curcumin by up to 2,000%. Not 20%. 2,000. People arrived at that exact combination thousands of years before anyone understood the word bioavailability. Turmeric has been sitting in spice cabinets and curry recipes for so long that the Western world nearly missed it entirely as medicine. The research says it is one of the most potent anti-inflammatory tools available from any source, natural or synthetic. And it has been in your kitchen the whole time.
Plant 3, peppermint, the headache treatment that beat acetaminophen in clinical trials. I told you at the start of this video that plant number 3 outperformed a pharmaceutical painkiller in clinical trials. Not matched it, outperformed it. Here it is. And I want you to understand the full weight of what that actually means. Menthopiprida, peppermint, is in your toothpaste right now. It is in your chewing gum. It is in the candy bowl at the restaurant checkout counter. It is one of the most ubiquitous flavors in modern consumer products, so familiar, so ordinary, so everywhere that nobody stopped to ask what it was actually doing inside the body. The primary active compound is menthol, and menthol is genuinely remarkable chemistry. It activates TRPM8 cold-sensitive receptors in the skin and mucous membranes, creating a cooling sensation that carries real, measurable analgesic effects at the neurological level. But the applications extend far beyond surface cooling. For tension headaches, the most common type of headache experienced by the majority of adults, multiple randomized controlled trials have shown that peppermint oil applied to the forehead and temples produces headache pain relief equivalent to, and in several measures superior to, acetaminophen. The same active mechanism that makes it feel refreshing produces measurable, documented headache relief in controlled clinical settings. That result consistently stops people in their tracks because they were not prepared for a plant to outperform a pharmaceutical on pain management. For irritable bowel syndrome, a condition affecting hundreds of millions of people globally, enteric-coated peppermint oil capsules are now widely acknowledged as one of the most effective treatments available. Backed by multiple meta-analyses, the menthol relaxes smooth muscle tissue in the intestinal wall, directly reducing the cramping and spasms that drive IBS symptoms. Several gastroenterology clinical guidelines now include peppermint oil as a recommended first-line treatment option. That is a medical specialty formally endorsing a plant. For respiratory congestion, menthol is a clinically validated decongestant. It opens airways by stimulating cold receptors in the nasal passages, reducing the physical sensation of nasal resistance and improving airflow measurably. Headache pain, gut spasms, respiratory congestion, 3 entirely separate medical applications. 1 plant, managed simultaneously. Name a single pharmaceutical drug that addresses 3 distinct physiological systems at once, without a side effect list attached. Peppermint has been performing clinical-grade medicine the entire time. Growing in gardens, sitting in spice drawers, flavoring toothpaste. Nobody told you what it was actually doing. Now you know. I want to stop here for a moment and ask you something directly. How many people do you know, maybe yourself, maybe someone you love, who are currently managing a health condition with a medication that costs more every single month than their grocery bill? That comes with a side effect list requiring a second medication to manage the first one's damage that a doctor told them they would be on for the rest of their life, as if that were simply the new normal and nothing better existed. What if a better option, not a miracle claim, not an overnight cure, not an empty promise, was a plant that cost $2 at the grocery store and has been working reliably for 3,000 years? I built a free resource specifically for people who are ready to ask that question seriously. It is called How to Treat 30 Common Conditions Naturally, without prescriptions, without side effects, and without your doctor's permission. 30 conditions: high blood pressure, chronic inflammation, digestive disorders, insomnia, joint pain, blood sugar dysregulation, weak immune function, each one covered with a clear, practical, natural protocol you can begin implementing today. No doctor's appointment, no pharmacy queue, no copay, no dependency, no side effects, no warning label, just real, evidence-backed guidance on addressing what your body is actually communicating instead of suppressing the symptom and calling it treatment. This ebook is completely free. Drop the words "please send" in the comments right now, just those 2 words, and I will send the download link directly to you. If you are watching this later, scroll through the comments, find someone who wrote "please send." The link is already there. And if this video is genuinely shifting how you see what is already in your kitchen and your garden, hit subscribe right now. Because what we build on this channel goes deeper every single week. For plants down, 3 left. And I promise you, the final 2 are the ones that will make you want to send this video to everyone you care about. Plant number 2. Plant 2, ginger. 5,000 years of global consensus, now beating pharmaceutical anti-nausea drugs in clinical trials. No plant on this entire list has been used as medicine across more separate, geographically disconnected, culturally distinct civilizations than ginger. Ancient Chinese medicine documented it over 5,000 years ago. Ayurvedic tradition in India built it into foundational healing protocols. Greek physicians prescribed it. Arab traders carried it across continents specifically for its medicinal value. Medieval European herbalists incorporated it without any shared lineage with the Asian traditions that had been using it for thousands of years before them. Every one of these civilizations, with no communication between them, no shared texts, no connected lineage, independently arrived at the same plant for the same conditions: nausea, inflammation, digestive dysfunction, pain. When 5,000 years of independent global consensus points at a single plant for the same applications, that is not coincidence. That is not cultural transmission. That is every major civilization on Earth independently running the same extended clinical observation and arriving at the same conclusion. Modern pharmacological research validated every one of those conclusions. Gingiber officinale contains gingerols and showgales, compounds with documented anti-nausea, anti-inflammatory, and analgesic effects that operate through real, identified biochemical mechanisms. For nausea specifically, the clinical evidence is remarkable in its consistency. Multiple randomized controlled trials have found that ginger performs as effectively as pharmaceutical anti-nausea medications, and in several studies outperforms them. For chemotherapy-induced nausea, post-surgical nausea, and pregnancy-related morning sickness. 3 completely different causes of nausea in 3 completely different patient populations, in 3 completely different clinical contexts. Same result every time. For pain and inflammation, research has demonstrated that ginger extract produces significant improvements in osteoarthritis pain and post-exercise muscle soreness. The anti-inflammatory compounds in ginger work through some of the same COX enzyme pathways as nonsteroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, which is precisely why the pain relief effects are measurable, consistent, and clinically meaningful. For digestion, ginger accelerates gastric emptying, the rate at which food moves through the stomach. This is the exact mechanism behind 5,000 years of traditional use for indigestion, bloating, nausea, and general digestive discomfort. The traditional healers did not know the mechanism. They observed the outcome. Modern gastroenterology confirmed the mechanism decades later. Fresh ginger tea is sliced raw root simmered in hot water for 10 minutes. It is in every grocery store on Earth. It costs almost nothing. It has been outperforming pharmaceutical nausea drugs in clinical trials. The gap between what this root costs and what it delivers is not an accident. It is the entire story of how we ended up driving to the pharmacy for things that were already in our kitchens.
Plant 1: garlic, the most studied medicinal plant on Earth. In your kitchen right now. Active against antibiotic-resistant bacteria. And here we are at number 1. Not an exotic root from a remote mountain range. Not a rare botanical available only through specialty suppliers or traditional practitioners. Not something that requires a licensed herbalist to source, prepare, or prescribe. A white bulb, sitting in a bowl on your kitchen counter right now. The one you peel for pasta on a Tuesday night without a second thought. Allium sativum, garlic, is the most universally documented medicinal plant in recorded human history. Ancient Egyptian medical texts listed in medical preparations dating back over 3,000 years. Hippocrates, the man whose oath doctors still take, prescribed garlic for infections, respiratory conditions, digestive disorders, and fatigue. Greek Olympians consumed it before competition for physical performance. Roman soldiers ate it daily throughout military campaigns for strength, stamina, and infection resistance. Chinese medicine deployed it for 5,000 years across virtually every category of illness. Ayurvedic tradition did the same, independently, with no shared lineage. Every major ancient medical tradition on Earth, separated by thousands of miles, by language, by culture, by centuries, independently arrived at the same white bulb as a primary medicine. When that happens across 5,000 years and dozens of unconnected civilizations, it is not coincidence. It is not cultural borrowing. It is every human population that ever encountered this plant running extended multigenerational observation and arriving at the same conclusion. It works. The primary active compound is allicin, synthesized the moment a garlic clove is crushed or chopped, and an enzymatic reaction is triggered between alliin and alliinase. Allicin and its breakdown compounds carry documented, peer-reviewed antimicrobial activity against a remarkable range of pathogens. Bacteria, viruses, fungi, parasites, And here is the detail that modern medicine takes very seriously. Studies have shown measurable antimicrobial activity against antibiotic-resistant bacterial strains, including MRSA, methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, the strain that hospital infection control units actively fear, the strain that modern antibiotics are increasingly failing to treat. The plant in your kitchen has shown documented activity against it in laboratory research. For cardiovascular health, meta-analyses pooling data across multiple independent clinical trials confirm meaningful blood pressure reductions in hypertensive patients who consume garlic regularly. Consistent, statistically significant LDL cholesterol reductions across dozens of trials. Measurable improvements in arterial stiffness, endothelial function, and platelet aggregation. The factors that determine cardiovascular risk at the most fundamental level. For immune defense and infection prevention, a landmark randomized controlled trial found that people taking a daily garlic supplement experienced significantly fewer colds over the winter study period and recovered measurably faster when illness did occur, compared to the placebo group. For cancer prevention, large-scale population studies across multiple independent cohorts consistently find that high dietary garlic consumption correlates with reduced incidence of certain cancers, particularly gastrointestinal cancers. The evidence is observational rather than interventional clinical trial data, but the signal is consistent enough, across enough separate populations, that cancer researchers take it seriously as a dietary variable. The practical protocol is simple. Raw, crushed garlic delivers the highest allicin content. Let it sit for 10 minutes after crushing before cooking. This allows the enzymatic reaction to complete before heat degrades the compounds. Aged garlic extract supplements are the most extensively studied form for cardiovascular benefits specifically. That is it. That is the entire protocol for one of the most validated medicinal substances in human history. 5,000 years of use. Hundreds of published clinical studies. Antimicrobial activity against the bacterial strains modern medicine is struggling to treat. Cardiovascular protection confirmed across dozens of independent trials. Immune defense improvements documented in controlled research. Sitting in your kitchen. Costing less than $1. That is not a coincidence. That is not folklore. That is the most studied, most validated, most universally used medicinal plant in human history. Hiding in plain sight as a cooking ingredient while the world spent the last 100 years driving past it to reach the pharmacy. The medicine was never lost. It was just reclassified as dinner. 7 plants. All of them pointing back to the same truth. The most powerful medicines available to you right now are not the most expensive. They are not the most complicated. They are not locked behind a prescription pad, a consultation fee, or a 3-week waiting list. Most of them are in your kitchen right now, and they have been there the entire time. Tell me in the comments, which one hit you hardest? Was it peppermint outperforming acetaminophen for headache pain? Elderberry cutting flu duration by 4 days? Garlic showing documented activity against antibiotic-resistant bacteria? Drop it below. I read every single comment. And if you haven't grabbed the free ebook yet, this is your reminder. Drop "Please send" in the comments right now. 30 conditions. Natural protocols. No prescriptions. No side effects. Completely free. 2 words and it is yours. If this video changed how you see what is already growing in your garden and sitting on your kitchen counter, hit like, hit subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. Because what we cover on this channel keeps going deeper every single week. The medicine was never lost. You just remembered where to look.